Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to catch up on the latest on Boris Johnson handing over the government records on his old mobile phone, as it looks like he's still been a little bit tricksy about it. But also it's been pointed out that the government may have lied in a sworn statement to court. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So after months of talking absolute tosh, Boris Johnson finally agreed that actually there were safe ways to extract the data from the phone he used in 2020, that actually the passcode was known, and that he was more than happy to see the COVID inquiry get all the data. And the last video I did about this, like a week ago, I suggested that this was it now. He'd run out of road, the records would be extracted, and the COVID inquiry would soon have them. And indeed, a casual reading of the latest news on that, just before the weekend, could give you this impression. Now, the devil is in the detail. From reports, it would appear that experts have now extracted records from his phone. Oh, good. These will be passed on to the Cabinet Office, who will screen them before handing them over to the COVID inquiry. Now, some people are upset about this sort of process, but it's actually fine. I know people don't really trust any part of the government, including the Cabinet Office, and wanted the records handed directly to the COVID inquiry, but I think it's worth bearing a few things in mind. First of all, these are government records, and the government have a right to know what's in them as well, in order to make sure security isn't compromised. Got nothing to do with saying, oh no, security, you can't have that, Baroness Hallett. It's entirely just to do with the fact that the government actually have records of what happened in government a few years ago. Nothing to do with, as I say, telling the head of the inquiry who's got all the clearance she needs that she can't have them. Second, the Cabinet... It's worth bearing in mind, the Cabinet Office did hand over Johnson's diaries to the police when they found evidence of law breaking. So there is a suggestion there that they're not all covering for Boris Johnson. That being said, there is a small area of doubt, which I'll cover at the end of the video. And then third, of course, the court order was for the Cabinet Office. It wasn't for Boris Johnson. It was for the Cabinet Office. So they are the ones who need to hand it over anyway. So although this is all taking what seems like an unreasonable amount of time, especially as the inquiry's second deadline passed some time ago, it at least sounds like they're going to be handed over and all is well. Only there are a few little flies in the ointment. See, the reports on Friday said that Boris Johnson's spokesperson had said that relevant messages would be handed over to the COVID inquiry unredacted. Now, there are four important parts to that statement in no particular order. The first is that these messages will be handed over. Well, as it takes less time to hand them over than to tell the press you're handing them over, I don't know why it's still in the future tense. Why were they telling the press that it will be handed over? Why haven't they told the press, oh, we've just handed it over? The second part is more telling. It says relevant messages. Relevant. Well, isn't this where the government had a scrap with the inquiry in court? Rishi Sunak justified defying the inquiry's orders on the basis that he wanted to filter out irrelevant documents. Oh, you don't need to see irrelevant documents. I'll decide what's relevant, the head of the inquiry said, and the High Court agreed. So if the government aren't allowed to decide what is and isn't relevant, why should Boris Johnson be able to? I suspect another battle coming up here. It's worth remembering that for all Boris Johnson's public show of wanting to help the inquiry out, it is, of course, complete hogwash. He just wants to seem cooperative, but the last thing he wants is the public finding out what he was saying while he was supposed to be protecting the nation. Granted, we know that some of what he said, he will think perfectly reasonable, because we saw enough of that behaviour during the Privileges Committee inquiry. His moral compass is way off. But he will also know that some of the things he said will be problematic for him. So the suggestion that he is curating the records is clearly unacceptable, and you would imagine the COVID inquiry will agree and at some point need to pursue it. And I think it will have to be the inquiry, because in theory, the Cabinet Office could just demand the phone and extract all the data themselves. But Sunak does not want those records handing over any more than Johnson did. So all of this is going to have to come from the inquiry. The third curious part of the statement was the use of the term messages, relevant messages. All relevant messages will be handed over. No. It should be all records handed over. Use of the term message is highly suspicious. It allows him and his team to not hand over certain records because, well, that's not a message, is it? The fourth part of the statement is the only satisfactory part, rather, that it will be unredacted. But given that he is aiming to curate the records so that only what are deemed messages are handed over, and even then only if they're considered relevant by Boris Johnson, not the COVID inquiry, I'm not sure unredacted is really going to be used all that accurately here. So fun and games. However, it's worth pointing out some further fun and games just to finish off as well. Jolyon Moam, the director of the Good Law Project, noted that in relation to a case they took against the government, the Cabinet Office made a sworn statement in court that these messages were no longer available to search. But this is not true, is it? It was available to be searched. There were claims that it was risky to do so, but even those risks were massively overblown because data security experts all said it was easy to deal with. Not just, yeah, there's a way to do it. It's like, no, this is easy. So a senior member of the Cabinet Office has given a false statement in court. Now, it's not necessarily a knowingly false statement. Come to that. Now, my natural cynicism tells me that this is unlikely to be probed. But shouldn't there be an investigation into this? Why did an official lie in court? We should know. For example, did she realise she was lying? She may not have done. She may have believed the statement she was given to court. You know, has she been lied to? If so, who lied to her? But also, who else is involved in this deception? Because the High Court were given a false statement. A sworn statement was false. Just another example of how everything and anyone that comes into contact with Boris Johnson ends up in a right mess. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.